Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Matt Salem, and you've tuned in to another episode of Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. We are the global digital first leader in providing data intelligence through our AI and tech enabled product stack to help brands own the most valuable moment in marketing, the purchase transaction. We are Behaviorally, the transaction experts. Each episode, we share insights on trending topics within our industry and of interest to our customers. Today, we're joined by Meryl Debrosse, Global Insights and Analytics Manager, Enfamil, at Reckitt, to discuss the transformative world of insights, exploring the cutting edge technologies that are reshaping business landscapes. From enhancing customer experiences to streamlining operations and fueling growth, we'll discuss how these innovations are revolutionizing industries across the board. Meryl, welcome. So glad to have you with me today.
So glad to be here, Matt. Thank you for inviting me. We talked about this last year, so it's really nice that we're bringing it to fruition now.
I was just going to say, it's been a long time coming of sorts.
Yeah.
Time does fly, though, but wow, it was like last year already that we talked about this. It's great that we're finally making it happen. I love it. Tell us a bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. I am currently working on the global team, like you said, for Enfamil. I started my insights career about 15 years ago. I've always been in consumer insights, but I actually started working for Procter and Gamble in research and development. So I spent the first half of my career in R&D and also working in beauty. So I have then since made the switch into marketing. Have worked for L'Oreal, and then I moved into foods and refreshments when I made the marketing switch. And so now here I am with Enfamil. My background is actually biology, which is kind of interesting in how I got here, but it actually works really well for my nutrition role. And so there were some meetings that we had with our tech team, and they were talking about synaptogenesis and myelination. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like, junior biology class. So it's been really cool to kind of, marry all of it together. So I absolutely love what I do and, love being the voice of the consumer in the room.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing that. I love hearing how everything just kind of organically came together for you along your career path. That's amazing.
Very weird, but, when I look back on it, I couldn't have planned it any better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And let's take a moment there, I guess, in looking back and reflecting back, right? And perhaps through the lens of how research has continued to change and will continue to change, right? So if we think about, I think about my own career, 20 plus years at Behaviorally, and what research once was, what research is now, the digitization of business, of research. I mean, wow, you talk about things kind of flipping on their end. The way we used to conduct research predominantly is quite different than the way we're doing it now. And not only has there been digital transformation, but of course, the incorporation of AI. So I'd love to hear your perspective on those changes, and particularly as you get toward the kind of the tail end in today, I would say, the way you're seeing AI have an impact in how you operate day to day.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because as you know, when we started, we were doing questionnaires and research on paper, right? So as a new hire, I was partnered with, seasoned researchers, and I'm there making photocopies of questionnaires. And then at the end, typing data into Excel spreadsheets and learning how to, to calculate top two box and things like that, very manually, which, for me, I appreciate all of that, because now I really understand the nuances of some of kind of the basics of our business of market research. But I remember when we had like a windfall of money at the end of one fiscal year, and we bought iPads, and we switched from paper to some digital questionnaire service, probably like a Survey Monkey or something like that.
Sure.
And I remember my experience. These are seasoned researchers who've been doing it for 30 years, and they were freaking out because they're like, oh my gosh, the computer and the iPad. And so for me, being younger and also a little bit tech savvy, I was like, oh, I will program all of the questionnaires. I will learn how to do that if you teach me how to write the questionnaires, right? Because there's such a science and an art in writing questionnaires. And so that was kind of like my my currency at the time was just being tech savvy and being able to help them through that digital transformation. And so I think now AI is kind of like the next phase of that. I personally think of AI as a part like an admin that I can overwork without feeling bad about it, right? I can tell this tool, hey, I need you to go and find out this information. I need you to go and what is the summary of this long thing. The beautiful thing is on some of the qual platforms, it's able to read transcripts
Mhm.
and put together summaries and help to create sizzle reels. I remember taking hours of like watching, you take the chip out of the video recorder and you're putting it in your computer and you're watching hours and hours just trying to get key quotes and themes of like qual research, and now you can just have the AI read the transcript, put the themes together, you can do sentiment analysis. It's mind blowing. It's really cool.
It really is. You're giving me a lot of great, maybe I hesitate to use the word great, but flashbacks of early in my career as well, with photocopying questionnaires and color coding them, and just thinking about all the manual ways that things were done. 3-ring binders of
Oh,
data
I
sets
know.
that were
Yes.
stacks like this on your desk and then stacks
Yes.
like that on your desk. I mean, you're giving me all these flashbacks. I love it. But
Yes.
it's a great analogy because just like those changes happened, and now you look back and say, wow, we used to do it that way. That's what it'll be another 3 to 5 years from now when we look back at 5 years past, because AI will have changed so much. And, I love the ways you're using it. I mean, similarly, there's times where I'm putting in quite long prompts looking to summarize pieces of information and literally hitting enter and then going and doing something else and checking back on it in a bit, whether that's moments later or an hour later. It's just that kind of side help that you can get, like at the snap of your fingers. And
Absolutely.
it's extremely helpful to facilitating tasks on your desk throughout the day.
Absolutely. And when I think about it, I was trying to explain this to my dad, right? Because he's kind of like, he sees the science fiction movies and thinks of AI in that way, and I'm like, that's not quite what how I use it in a daily basis. I think about it like just how I would give a brief to your team for a project. That's how I kind of have to brief the AI of what I needed to do for me. So if we're in a briefing meeting or call and I'm explaining what my objectives are and it doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to be able to meet my objectives. And so it's the same thing with AI. And I think when we think about prompt engineering, is that we have to make our briefs or our objectives very clear to this tool, just like we would another human. It's just that maybe the human would ask a better question than AI, at least right at this time. So, which I know we're going to get to that place where the AI is probably just as good, if not better, at those responses.
Yeah, well said. It's certainly not as simple as just putting in a few random Google search words. And while you can use it in that simple of a fashion, the quality of response that you'll get is dramatically different if you take the time to finally craft the prompt. So yeah, that's so true, and I think that's a good segue into some of the other pieces that I wanted to cover with you today, because there's a variety of skills that are needed in order to leverage AI, and one of them is frankly prompt and prompt quality. And if we
Yeah.
think about those skill sets, and if we think about the way that teams are using AI, perhaps in even a cross-functional fashion, excuse me, in the office place, tell me about the different ways that you're seeing it used, not just for yourself perhaps, but for other team members, and how that contributes to the overall team effort.
So right now, and I'm sure we're not unique than a lot of other big companies, we are very careful to use AI because we don't have an internal AI system yet. So we've been kind of told to be careful. But I just see people using it every day. Can you come up with an image? That's a big one. So like with PowerPoint presentations, come up with an image that, you know, depicts blase, blase, blah, and then you can add that to your PowerPoint, and it's just kind of phenomenal the way that it puts in keywords into those images. I know that, and we've talked about it for an I&A perspective. We can't wait until we have an internal. We have some pilots and some beta versions right now, to be able to kind of come up with taglines and concepts. Um, and other of our tasks that I think sometimes when you sit down, maybe to write claims and things like that, you kind of can have a little bit of analysis paralysis and get stuck kind of just getting started. And so even when I use AI kind of in a personal sense, it's always to get me started. Like if I have to write a bio for myself, I actually will tell AI, go onto my LinkedIn and kind of summarize my career. And that it just gets me started. And sometimes it comes back with something that's like, that's garbage, but it starts. It's a start.
Right.
And it's better than me sitting there for an hour stressing about how to write the perfect bio, because it's easier, as they say, to critique than to create. So I can go in there and change this and change that and be like, I didn't work at Pepsi. Like, what are you talking about? And like I'm like, it's obviously hallucinating, but just to be able to have a starting place and a framework. And I think the other thing that AI is really not good at is kind of creating templates that you can then just kind of put in the correct information into. So that, like, I don't know about you, but I just get so stuck getting started with tasks, and I think AI really lowers the bar for that. Even as I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, even as I think about I'm gonna write my end of year review, I'm gonna kind of put some bullet points down and then ask it to kind of make it nice.
I,
So
I'll
I
tell
hope
you. I
I hope
mean,
my boss doesn't hear that.
no, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I agree to the extent that sometimes I find it's now so easy to get those starting points that you're now deliberating upon, well, is that the best starting point? Let me try another angle. And instead, you're kind of like entertaining a variety of starting points and spending time there, which makes the end product better.
Absolutely,
Right?
absolutely,
Because if you
yes.
take a lot of time to find that starting point, you're likely just going to go with it because it's like, all right, I already put in the effort. I'm going to keep riding this train. But if anything, it gives you the opportunity to explore various routes into the points that you're trying to make.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it likes writing poetry, so maybe I'll write my end of year statement in poetically. So we'll see about that.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me ask in terms of how AI is being used more through the research specific lens, right? So we talked about generative, we talked about picture creation. That's a great use. I've used it like that myself. And in fact, if you think about pack design, obviously it's something we think about and the power that generative will have in the future in order to help facilitate design. Another obvious one there. But one thing we talked about on a prior call, which I found interesting, was utilizing AI to understand shopper decision making and more specifically, I guess, consumer decision tree type work. Is
Yes.
that something that you're doing that you're still thinking about? I know we had some brief conversation on it, so if you can harken back and give me kind of an update, that would be fantastic.
So it's just something that, like, kind of, I don't know, a creative idea that came to my mind is, I've done some consumer decision tree work in the past, and we have a need for it. It was such a nightmare just getting the SKU list together, and I was just thinking like, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was just, camera set up? Of course, you let people know this, but cameras set up that is just kind of capturing the natural behavior of consumers in the aisle, and then uh, because somebody is gonna at some point have to go and take pictures of what's in the aisle, but just capturing that and using that as a starting point, instead of the kind of the traditional way that we've done it, which is trying to get a bunch of SKUs and figuring out what's representative of the region, or of the retailer, and all of that. I think that would be great. I think that once we get our private AIs as a company, it's the STEM creation is going to be off the charts, and
Mhm.
that's what I'm most excited for, because creating STEM, it becomes exhausting, and I think I think there was some statistic about the creativity of like people versus AI, and it does hallucinate, but then it actually is a lot more creative. So I think that, and even just start, like, again, having multiple ways in as a starting point can also spark a lot of human creativity. So I think it's going to take off and kind of revolutionize marketing moving forward. Even if you think about just ads, um, commercials, just all of those things. So I think once all of the big companies kind of get their private AI and their data lakes together, it's just going to be crazy.
Yeah. Let me ask in Meryl's world, thinking about colleagues, friends, your dad, what's the general sentiment for AI, against AI, trepidation, excitement? What are you feeling out there now? Because I feel like this is something that's changing quite rapidly in people's
Yes,
worlds. I'm curious what's happening in your world and what your take is.
everybody's doing it.
Mhm.
Everybody's using it in one way or the next, and it's like people are using it in the ways that they're comfortable with. Like my dad spent the weekend with me, and he just kept talking to his phone, and I was shocked. And so he's actually an HCP, and so his um, experience with AI is his dictation tool, right? So
Mhm.
again, I remember when I was younger and he had his practice, he would have to call a voicemail and dictate his notes, and then a lady would listen to that, and in 48 hours she would type it up, and then the papers would arrive. They would be sent in the mail. So that's probably like a week long process. And so now he has these tools that he uses as he's seeing his patients. He's getting, um, he's dictating as he goes along, and the AI, learns his voice, learns his vernacular, and all these things. And so this is his experience with AI. He doesn't even realize that that's what it is. So then now he's talking to his phone in the same way that he's talking to his dictation software. So that's an example of someone who's like not tech savvy, who's not intentionally using it, and then everybody else who knows about it, we're all using it. Um, this is weird, but like I've used it um in dating apps, like having a weird response to like a question just to find a witty response to something.
Okay.
Why not? Like just or even as I'm texting friends, it's like, oh, what would be a funny way to say this? I've used it. One of my friends, it was her birthday, and her husband asked me to make a little video for her, and I wrote what I wanted and had the AI write a poem, and then I read the poem on the video. It's just little things like that. So
That's great. It's funny you mentioned that because I used AI in similar fashion when I first started playing with it. When Bing Chat basically was first out as an app, or at least I
yeah,
was first using it as an app, literally on responses like, "Oh, craft
yeah,
a response like this for a text."
yeah,
And it was amazing how it worked to me, and I was just kind of playing around with it, and you could see the variety of responses that you could get in moments that
yeah.
some might align with what you were thinking, some might not, but it's just, yeah, there's just so many different creative ways that it can be used. And, as we begin to kind of wrap up here, that actually comes to a nice point on something you touched upon earlier, which is, balancing using AI at face value versus having human interjection and the combination thereof, right? So you mentioned hallucinations earlier. So there's this one idea of kind of proofing AI, if you will, like, hey, I didn't work there. That's not, where'd you get that from, right? And then there's this idea of like fine tuning it as well. So what kind of advice would you give to people? Like, do you have a general approach that you use? You mentioned you're using it to brainstorm, or even if it's more broad than a general approach, just advice that you would give in terms of when to leverage AI and some watch outs.
I think the watch out is to just like cut and paste, right? Why would we do that?
Right.
This is a tool, right? So use it as a tool and become better because you use the tool, not lazy.
I
And
love it.
so again, it's so much easier to critique. Like if if you have to write a paper, you're all stressed and you're writing it, and then someone gives you critique, you're like, oh man, I should have thought about that. It's so much easier to critique than to create, because you have some place to start with. So I would say always use, just kind of treat. I don't know. It's like mistreat the AI kind of thing, right? Like, let it do the work and then just critique it to no end to make it better. It is a tool. Show up better, show up more creative. And then I think just be unapologetic about like, yeah, I didn't write this. The tool that we have at our fingertips now helped me to make this more amazing, and I'm smart for leveraging every tool that I have.
Yeah. I love that whole idea of like, let it make you better. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, to take it a step further, it's like, don't let it make you, let it make you better. Right. Like, and
yeah,
I think that's where you're at with it. It's like,
yeah,
it's not your representative speaking for you. It's something to help you speak better in whatever way, whatever better is for the scenario you're in.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. Do you have like a favorite tool? Is it GPT? Is it something different? Do you have a favorite tool that you use, or even if it's something like, like now they have AI incorporated, it's like music apps to curate playlists. Is it something personal like that? Just curious.
I used ChatGPT a lot, and then the one that's like on associated with Microsoft, whichever one that
Oh,
is.
Copilot.
Copilot, right?
Yes.
Copilot is pretty good as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then I think I saw one is now built into some chat. Is it on Instagram or Facebook? Something that I was using that one the other day to kind of write funny responses to my friends, and I'm like, ha ha ha! The AI is saying this, this, and this. So
It's everywhere. It really is, and it's
yeah,
it's only going to continue to proliferate. So, tied into the earlier portions of the conversation, it's basically use it to make you better is the summary. I mean, I really think
that's
that's
it.
great.
And then
Well,
Siri, right? Siri is
oh,
this as well. So
of course.
I'm always bossing Siri around, and my Siri is a British gentleman, so he's very posh. So
Okay, nice. I like that. I
yeah,
changed. I changed. I'm a Android user, so if you want to hate me now. I know there's a
no,
lot of people, but I changed the voice on mine too a couple of times, and I think my most recent voice is Australian. So my
yeah,
my Australian mates from behaviorally would appreciate that.
absolutely. And so people get in my car and they're like, Siri is British. I'm like, absolutely,
I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. Well, Meryl, thanks so much for joining us today. I really
Yes.
appreciate it. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. Meryl, your time, your insights, sharing your stories with us. Thanks so much for that. Want to ask everybody to be sure to check out other episodes of Our Best Behavior. You can find it on our website. And with that, we'll catch you next time.
Thank you, Matt. Have a wonderful one.
You too.
All right.